Mark Gleason is asking, how do you maintain focus during long practice hours?
Yeah, by subdividing into small units. Um, we use, for example, for technique, we use practice sheets where, and you can actually, if I may say that, go to violinmasterclass.com and download the practice sheets. For the basics and scales and so on, we recommend to do, for example, a bowing exercise for 3 minutes, and then the next bowing exercise and the next one, and then oftentimes I get the reaction, well, 3 minutes is not enough. Um, 3 minutes is a lot if you do only one thing. So I'll give you the 10-second version of it. If I practice Kreutzer number 7 on Martelet in front of a mirror to keep my bow straight and change the sounding points. Yeah, that was probably 20 seconds. So 3 minutes becomes an eternity if you only do one thing. But if you really focus on that one thing, then you learn something. That's why I called this thing virtuous moments. Because the moments when we learn something, that's generally true in life, those moments are very short. And the more of those moments you can squeeze into your practicing, the better it is. So you have to have a very detailed plan. For example, what I touched on with Casey, practicing intonation. You know, we've all heard this, use the number 40. You play one note, the next beat, you sing the next note in your head, and then you play the next note. If you do that with incredible concentration, you can probably stay on that for an hour. And then your mind is exhausted and you need a break. So the thing is to find one thing to focus on. That's probably the most important thing. Rather than just, oh God, I have to play through this sonata now. Don't just play through the sonata. Find one thing you want to fix, or one thing you want to pay attention to and change. And don't let your mind wander. So if that's, for example, you want to do sound colors and sounding point, yeah, don't get distracted. Okay, here's a rhythm not quite there. Here's some intonation. Okay, not quite there. Stay with it. Stay on the task, and then make a note with a pencil tomorrow on this second movement of the Beethoven sonata. I need to do intonation. But you stay focused on the one thing that you set out to do. And that is usually a pretty good way of keeping your focus while you practice. And that's by far the fastest way to learn. There is a question by Albert Romero. Can you talk a bit about how to use intonation, which note would be higher or lower in a particular context to create colors? Yeah, that's a great question. And if you have 2 hours, I can explain it. For starters, violinmasterclass.com has an intonation section, and I define Pythagorean intonation, overtoned or just intonation, and tempered tuning. And you have to know what those are. So most of the time when we play melodies and scales, which is what violinists mostly do, we use Pythagorean intonation with large hold steps and narrow half steps. 1, 4, and 5 have to stay the same. That's why most violin concertos are in D major, because you have open strings that resonate with it. And then the leeway is with, for example, a major third. Yeah, I'll stay in D major. So I have a large hold step. And that works, that's Pythagorean. It does not work in double stops. If I play this to the open G string, way too high. Yeah, I want this. But I can't play a scale with that. It's not going to work. Yeah. So, and those there are mathematical facts that are in these videos that you can see why that is. When you have a little bit of leeway with what people sometimes call expressive intonation. So you have a major third, which is your characteristic interval for the key. In some cases, you can push it really high. In other cases, that sounds really out of tune. So you have to be careful. You want to make it sad? You can play it low, but there's a bandwidth and a limit. It's best expressed in the sense that the piano tuners use when they say in the temper tuning every half step has 100 cent. There is a table which you can find in the read more sections of the Violin Masterclass. There's a table that shows how many cents a major third in Pythagorean is higher than tempered, and a just major third is a little bit lower. And so that's, I would start with a mathematical discovery of what that is, and then go into how much can I influence it, more so in really romantic music. Yeah, Carmen Fantasy by Sarasate or Waxman, more so than in a Mozart concerto, but it does have its place in a Mozart concerto. Mainly if you play straight Pythagorean, you're going to sound glorious. Yeah, but you need to know the theory in order to choose where and when to do it.
Yeah, and I think it's very important expressive tool. One not necessarily talks about it, but I think all the old masters, especially singers and great instrumentalists, also great older generation of violinists and string players, Casals, and all the greatest violinists, and up to these days, I think Ivry Gitlis, who just passed away, he used this incredibly well, and it's very personal way of hearing the tension in the music and trying to get those overtones so that they really create the character of the of the melody, not just not just the playing way, but one can hear certain nuances which create very expressive element along with the timing and then many other things. So it's not only dynamics, not only the sound itself, but there's some very profound way for one to express certain nuances. And I think intonation in that regard is very expressive.
It's a powerful tool. Yeah. And as anything powerful, you have to be very careful with it. Practicing that takes many, many hours. Put the metronome at 40. Don't move that metronome to 42. Stay at 40. A beat in between, and then the next note. So you have time to listen to what you want in the next note. You have to know. If you don't know which note you want next, then any note is good enough. And that takes a lot of time. Don't do it with a short section, then speed it up. Play one note per beat, 2 notes per beat. You play the rhythm at 40, then play the rhythm at 60, 80, 100, wherever you need to go with it. But section by section, and it'll take you 2 weeks sometimes to get through one piece. By doing that 1 hour a day, it makes all the difference in your playing. It is miraculous how professional that sounds in the end, and how glorious.